Just a little background. I am with the Radiation Control Program in the state of Nevada. I've been in Nevada for 20 years. I spent 14 years in Montana before that, where my mentor was the person who discovered radon to be a naturally occurring problem. As a result of that, I was doing some of the early research on mitigation that the mitigators use today. So I can try to answer your questions. Okay, what is radon? It's a naturally occurring radioactive gas. It's part of the uranium-238 decay chain. There's uranium in all soils throughout the world, but it's in higher concentrations typically in shales, phosphates, and granites. It is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. That means that we can't sense it with any of our senses. And we'll talk a little bit about radon in water later. But primarily, the radon in our homes, for the most part, comes from the soil. As I stated, radon is found all over the world and in the U.S. This is the EPA map of radon zones, and their estimate is nationwide that 1 in 15 homes exceeds the EPA action level of 4 picocuries per liter. Obviously, radon doesn't care about geopolitical boundaries, and in every one of those, zone 3 being the lowest potential for an occurrence, in every one of those, elevated radon concentrations are found in homes. A picocurie per liter of air is what we measure it in. Basically, what that is the radioactivity contained in 1 liter of air due to radon. The national indoor radon average concentration is 1.3 picocuries per liter, and the average outdoor radon concentration is 0.4 picocuries per liter, and we cannot get below the ambient level outside in our homes. Now, that will vary hour to hour, day to day, seasonally. The EPA has established an action level of 4 picocuries per liter. That's not considered a safe level. I will tell you that historically, back in the 80s, possibly before, a little bit before, that level was established because of the ability of the technology at that time to reduce concentrations in homes, in most homes, to that level or below. There were also some other factors, but that's the primary factor that resulted in this action level by EPA. Today's current technology can reduce levels down to about 2 picocuries per liter or less in most homes. To put that into perspective, though, living in a home with a radon concentration at the action level poses a similar risk of developing lung cancer as smoking half a pack of cigarettes per day. And we'll talk about risk later, too. This is risk. Not everyone's going to get lung cancer. Okay. In Nevada, since we've been testing since 1989, currently about 26% of the homes tested in the state of Nevada are exceeding that EPA action level. As a result of that, we recommend that every home in the state be tested. And I have not looked at this one. This is the Douglas County radon potential. we're not going to get
Yeah, the top, right here, the red.
Okay. There we go. The highest radon level in Douglas County is over near Glenbrook, 117.9 picocuries per liter. This gives from various areas by zip code the percentage of homes that are exceeding the EPA action level. Okay, radon is what's called a Class A carcinogen, meaning it has the highest ranking for cancer potential. Basically, what it means is it is a known, it's known to cause cancer in humans. Some other things that are in that category: tobacco smoke, asbestos. Radon is estimated to cause about 21,000 lung cancer deaths per year in the United States. It is the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers, second leading cause of lung cancer overall, and it's the leading environmental cause of cancer deaths. Just one more point right here. The effects of radon in smoking are not additive in terms of risk, but multiplicative. They multiply each other. These are just some of the groups that have recognized it to be a serious national health problem, and the World Health Organization has indicated that it's also a world health problem. We'll kind of explain this a little bit later, but this is the, if you recall, I said that radon came about as a result of the uranium-238 decay chain. There's uranium in all soils throughout the world, and these numbers over here are what we call half-lives. Basically, over that period of time, half of the atoms of that radioisotope are gone in that amount of time. Half of them still remain. So obviously, uranium-238 has been around for a long time, since our world was formed. Will be around for a much longer time. Radon itself has a 3.8-day half-life. The reason that I'm bringing this up is we're concerned about radon, but only because radon is an alpha emitter, and it enters the home because it's a gas. It enters the home very readily, moves toward an area of lower pressure, builds up in concentrations. But as a gas, we breathe it in and breathe it out. And with a 3.8-day half-life, very little of it actually decays in our lungs. So it contributes very little radiation exposure to our lungs. But when radon does decay, it decays into two radon progeny that are of real concern: polonium-218 and polonium-214, both of which have a very short half-life, 3 minutes for that one, fraction of a second for that one. These are solid particles. They typically played out, about 50% of them roughly played out on furniture, walls, when they're formed. The rest of them played out on dust particles, water particles, in the air, and some of them remain unattached. When we breathe those in, they become lodged very deeply in the lungs, and they stay there and decay before they can actually be expelled by our lungs. Those are what contribute to the greatest radiation exposure, both of which are alpha particles, emit alpha particles, and I'll explain that a little bit later as well. As we just indicated, it decays into those radon decay products, or radon progeny, easily inhaled into lungs. When those particles are inhaled in our lungs, they're emitting alpha particles that can do several things, but what we're really looking at is DNA damage. If it destroys enough DNA, it can kill the cell. But what's a real concern, if it just breaks the DNA strands so that the DNA starts replicating in a manner that it shouldn't have, it has the wrong code, that's what will develop into cancer. And to give you an idea, as you recall, I mentioned the alpha particles. And they're really on the subatomic level, a very large particle, can carry a lot of energy with them. This actually shows these pits are where alpha particles have struck a piece of plastic, same type of plastic I have in my eyeglasses. It was exposed for 3 months at the EPA action level of 4 picocuries per liter, and it was magnified 100 times. But it does visualize, that's not, 100 times isn't much of a magnification. It does give us a visualization of what alpha particles can do. Alpha particles don't travel very far and only become of concern when they're in our body, when we've inhaled or ingested them. Alpha particles carry a lot of energy, but they don't travel very far, and you can stop alpha with a piece of paper, or our own dead skin layer will stop alpha particles. So they're only of concern when we breathe them into our lungs or ingest them. And if you recall, I said we'd talk about risk. Not everybody exposed to a given concentration of radon is going to get cancer. Not every smoker gets cancer. In fact, only about 10% do. But they have a much higher risk than the rest of the non-smoking population. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, if I were blindfolded and trying to hit a bullseye across the room and throwing one dart at a time, my chances of hitting that bullseye are very, very slim. If, on the other hand, I pick up a handful of darts and throw them, I stand a much better chance. So the concept is the higher the concentration, the less time you want to spend it. And this is a real simple bar graph that I think says an awful lot about radon. And what I see here may be a little different than what other people see. But it's comparing the radon deaths due to other causes of death. The one that's really interesting to me, 21,000 lung cancer deaths from radon. From secondhand smoke, 7,330. We've had a lot of legislation in many states across the country, including Nevada, regarding secondhand smoke. There is no legislation for radon in Nevada. There's no regulation at all at this time. And yet, people's concern seems to be a little bit misplaced in that 3 times greater lung cancer deaths. Excuse me, deaths overall. And this kind of speaks to that a little bit, and why is the evidence in radon not accepted or kind of ignored by people? There's a lot of reasons for it. There's no sensory reminders to tell us about it. I mean, it's not in our face. We can't sense it with any of our senses. And it doesn't happen right away. You know, I kind of grab my little heart when I see a car coming at me head on. This doesn't do that to us. It's naturally occurring, so there's no villains. Or as I put it, there's no one to sue over it being there. We can't link an individual death to radon. Just as anybody who has lung cancer dies of lung cancer, we can't say what actually caused their lung cancer. We can't say, even though the evidence may be that they were a smoker, that person's cancer may have been caused by asbestos or pollution or radon, or any combination thereof. There is some work being done right now that they think that there's something on the DNA level where they might be able to link some lung cancers to radon, but it's very preliminary work. It has a long latency period. We're talking 15 to 20 years for the lung cancer to develop. And because of that, children don't typically get lung cancer. If children don't have it, it's not that big a deal to most of us. They do, these cancers do occur one at a time. They're not clustered with a group of people in one small area. And because of all of these put together, there's no sensational story there. So there's very little press or media attention. And it's a voluntary risk. We all decide what we're exposed to in our homes and what we don't want to be exposed to in our homes. So it's a voluntary risk. That because of all of these other things, it's something that we don't think about every day. These are just some of the methods that radon enters the home. As I said, radon can come in through water if you're using a groundwater source. We haven't found that to be a significant problem in Nevada. The wells just aren't high enough. Basically, what happens is the amount of radon in the water, the main concern is what does it release to the indoor air. And the rule of thumb is it's a 10,000 to 1 exchange. So for every 10,000 picocuries per liter in water, you'll get 1 picocurie per liter in air released. And we just haven't seen any wells that were high enough to add a significant amount of radon. And so if you mitigate the soil source, you're taking care of probably over 95% of your problem. The cost of mitigating radon in water is typically around $5,000. Our mitigator here tonight will talk about costs that are somewhat less for mitigation of the soil source. So on a cost-benefit analysis, deal with the soil source. It does come in through natural cracks, and all concrete also cracks by itself. You know, I had a friend who used to say there are 2 types of concrete: cracked concrete and concrete that will crack. It does come in through plumbing areas, pipes, things like that come through foundations. And basically, the geology around our homes provides, number 1, the source for the radon, and number 2, a conduit or a way for it to move through to the home. The source does not have to be directly below the home. If the soil is porous and the source is off to the side of the home, it's perfectly natural for houses to depressurize, or as we put it, houses suck, through various means. And as a gas, radon is going to move toward an area of lower pressure. Our houses actually depressurize through various means, but one of the biggest is natural stack effect, heated air rising out of the home. Anytime that the home's indoor pressure is less than the soil gas pressure, you're going to suck that radon in where it can build up and accumulate. We sometimes make things worse with bathroom fans, kitchen fans, dryers. One of the things here too, and I don't recall if it come in, if that source happens to be over here on the side, it would typically normally off-gas through the soil to the outside air. But this winter, if we've got a snow cap or there's been a lot of rain and there's a lot of moisture in the soil, it caps that off, so that builds up pressure and will move toward the home where other times it might not. As we indicated earlier, higher concentrations of uranium 238 in granite, shales, and phosphates. There are natural pathways, sometimes cracks in the bedrock, porous soil, and there are some environmental factors that will affect the concentrations also. Radon concentrations actually vary day to day, hour to hour actually, day to day, seasonally. Temperature, wind, inversions. I've seen situations where the inversions that we get in the valleys will bring radon concentrations up above the EPA action in the outside areas. And I've seen this to be very typical as well. Don't listen to what your neighbors are saying. We recommend that every home be tested. I've actually personally seen a house that was at 350 picocuries per liter, and the house next door was less than 4 picocuries per liter. These are some of the testing methods. And they gave me some things for show and tell. These are the short-term test kits, and you can just pass these around. Those two are basically these short-term test kits. They're activated charcoal. And when you place them out, all that they're actually doing is the air is giving up some of the radon in the air and absorbing itself onto that activated charcoal. They'll do a gamma spectroscopy or liquid simulation test on that, do some calculations, determine concentrations. This one here is what is termed a long-term alpha test kit. It says exposed for 90 days. These two up here are short-term, are definitely screening tests. This one, if it's done for less than a full year, I still consider that to be a screening test. The reason is that the EPA action level of 4 picocuries per liter is based on an annual average. And if you do a test for a full year, that's the most definitive test you can do. That takes into consideration the daily and seasonal fluctuations and how you live in your home. But screening tests are very important. These are continuous radon monitors, usually used for real estate purposes, usually relatively expensive. They have to be calibrated every year. For the most part, the ones that are considered relatively accurate and pretty good are in the $800 range and above. These are the EPA protocols for testing for a short-term test. Basically calls for closed house conditions, which means that the outside doors and windows must be closed 12 hours before the test and during the entire test. Normal coming and going is no problem. Heating and cooling systems should operate normally, and air conditioning should recirculate the inside air, not bring in outside air. You turn off fans or air exchanges that would bring in outside air. Swamp coolers in this area are a real problem in the summer. Number one, it's bringing in a lot of outside air. And number two, it's also, for these charcoal test kits, it's introducing a lot of moisture. So even if the house is closed up, if you're using a swamp cooler, it's not going to be a good test. And if you have a radon mitigation system in the home, that stays on during the test if you're just testing to see how efficient your system is or if it's working. And don't test during severe storm or in periods of high wind. That can, it's hard to say. It depends on the house. There's a lot of variables that come into play, but that can actually increase your radon concentration or it can decrease it due to the wind. And I think there's one that maybe not. The testing location should be the lowest lived-in area of the home. Basically, wherever you live, the lowest lived-in area. For real estate purposes, it gets a little more difficult because if you have an unfinished and unused basement, you would want to test in the lowest living area of the home where you use it. If it's for a real estate transaction, then the buyer may want to finish that off and use it. And in that case, we would consider that a potential living area and test there. The best places to test are bedrooms and family rooms. We don't test in garages, bathrooms, kitchens, closets, or crawl spaces. Some of those areas I don't spend much time in, especially the crawl space. The test kit should be placed a minimum of 12 inches from an inside wall, 3 feet minimum from an exterior wall with no openings, and at least 20 inches above the floor. And try to keep it out of the reach of dogs, cats, kids. It won't hurt them, but it will mess up your test.
Can you go back?
Sure. To the last one here.
And you have all
There.
that information in your test?
Yes, the test
instruction?
kit will have
Yes.
all of that.
Normally you put it on the inside.
Preferably near an inside wall, but even then 12 inches away from the wall.
Okay.
So you depend on on these test kits, you're strictly dependent upon your air circulation, correct?
We actually want to keep it out of drafty areas.
Well, right, but I mean, you're suspending particles and things like that, you know,
Yeah.
just,
The problem with putting it near an outside wall is typically that area, maybe you've got a slab with a footing or something, the main entry point is right there on that outside wall. And the lower you put that, because radon is heavier than air, the higher the concentrations are going to be as well. So 20 inches minimum, we want to get it up into a breathing area. 20 inches, considering that's about where you're sitting or laying on the bed or something like that. This is very, very important. This is the data sheet in the kit. When you start your test, fill this out. It's your start date and time. They use that for the calculation of your concentrations at the lab. When you end it, fill in your start date and time. Without that, they cannot do the calculations either. It's an invalid test unless you can provide that to them later. Kind of important to put your name and address on there so they know where to send the report as well. After you've filled all this out, make sure that you stick this in the kit when you mail it back into the laboratory. Good idea to keep your record of the date and the serial number. If something does happen or it gets lost, we might be able to track it down by the serial number and get you your results. Okay, the postage is paid on these test kits. If you do put them in, well, let me say this first. The postage is paid. They are time dependent, so when you stop your test, get it in the mail the same day. If it arrives too late to the laboratory, they can't calculate it. Some people have opted to send it by UPS or FedEx at their own expense. If you do that, use the street address so that it can get delivered appropriately. And Cooperative Extension actually recommends, because they've been dealing with these being mailed in for a number of years, that you start your test on Friday morning, end it on Monday morning. The test kit is a minimum of 48 hours, maximum of 96 hours. So if you do it for 3 days, 72 hours puts you right in the middle. You're not going to be under, you're not going to be over. And like I said, get it mailed in the same day that you stop it. Include the data sheet, keep a record. And if you don't get your results, you can call their 800 number here at Cooperative Extension. When you get your results back, these are the recommendations. If the result is less than 4 picocuries per liter, you really have no problem. EPA does kind of recommend that you do a test if your test results are between 2 and 4, 4 being their action level. The reason, as I stated earlier, is that the current technology can reduce concentrations to 2 picocuries per liter or below in most homes. When you're in this range, though, you need to make a personal decision with a cost-benefit analysis. It's going to cost you the same amount to reduce it from 40 picocuries per liter down to 2, as it will from 4 down to 2. But the risk reduction is much less. So risk reduction per cost or benefit cost analysis, do that and make your own personal decision. If the results are greater than 8, the recommendation is do another short-term test to verify the results of the first. They will vary because there are a lot of variables, including daily fluctuations. Average those two together, and if it's above 4 picocuries per liter, consider mitigating or fixing the problem. And if the result is between 4 and 8 picocuries per liter, do a year-long test to get your results for the annual average. Like I said, that's the best test you can get, that you can do. Typically, the annual average will be less than the screening result. If the house has elevated radon concentrations and you decide to mitigate, use a certified mitigator who's also a Nevada state licensed contractor. Tried to get 2 estimates from the contractors. Most radon systems can be installed in one day, and our mitigator will talk about that a little bit, I believe. Again, as stated, we can get down to 2 or below, and we'll talk about that from this and personal experience. And basically what the system does, this is known as active soil depressurization, and it's a collection system under a slab or a membrane in a crawl space that collects it, maintains a negative pressure under here so that it's less than the pressure in the living space, and redirects the flow out to the outside air with an inline fan. Again, sealing cracks won't do much good for you. Number one, there are a lot of cracks that we can't see that radon will come through very easily. It's cracks that aren't visible to the human eye, even if you're looking at the concrete. There are also cracks behind walls. Some of those are more than cracks; they're big holes that you can't see them, so you can't seal them. Sealing by itself doesn't do very much for you, but sealing what you can see will make a mitigation system a bit more efficient. And again, our mitigator will talk about that. Obviously, here in January, opening the windows is not a viable solution. Buying a home, real estate transactions, there are no specific statutes regarding radon in Nevada. There are some general things about disclosure if you have environmental hazards, and some of the disclosure forms in a real estate transaction do include radon. But basically, people, as you become knowledgeable about radon, more and more people are starting to ask if they're buying a home to have the home tested beforehand. We would like to see people test their homes for their family's health's sake first. Real estate transaction, because everybody's in a hurry, isn't the best time to make good decisions. And there is a home buyer's and seller's guide to radon that's available out there, and it is a good publication as well. Testing for a home, use an independent third-party tester, especially in a real estate transaction. That limits the liability of the seller, the buyer, and the realtor, all three. Most of these folks, well, I won't say most, a lot of them will have continuous radon monitors. They can give you results in 48 hours. And I guess I should say, when I was talking about the certified mitigator and certified measurement personnel, certified means that they've been through a training course, they've taken an examination, and they keep up continuing education, and they have pledged to use the EPA protocols or other protocols that are out there and accepted as well. If you're selling a home, if you know about a hazard, you should, to limit your liability, disclose it. Knowing that the home has been tested and it's relatively recent, current, and if you can provide those test results to a potential buyer, that may be a plus if it's below 4 picocuries per liter. Like I said, test the home before selling for your family's health sake, preferably, because that will allow you time to do a long-term, more definitive test if necessary. If radon is found, mitigated, a mitigated home in the area can actually be a selling point, because we have a lot of people coming from other areas and other states especially that are asking to have homes tested and won't consider homes unless they've been mitigated in many cases. So it is a marketing plus. And if you're building a new home, if the contractor can do the work while he's there, it's much less expensive to build a system that is aesthetically pleasing, everything's hidden, and build it in during construction. And there is a booklet out that's called Building Radon Out that is for contractors, tells them the steps to build a home that is radon resistant in new construction. These are some of the references that are available, and I think you have some here today. This one here is just a guide to mitigation. This is the home buyers and sellers guide to radon. The citizens guide is just general information about radon. We just talked about the radon building, radon out for the contractors. And this one is a do-it-yourself mitigation. I've known the authors of this book for a lot of years. They're both very, very good. It's a very good book. And even if you don't want to do it yourself, it's probably a really good book to read before you talk to the contractor. Our contractor will tell you much better to talk to people who are knowledgeable. Shaking his head. And for more information, some contact information.
So I'm the Susan Roberts up there, and Jamie Royce Gomes is in the back here. When you call Radon Hotline, you'll get one of us on there. If you're active in Facebook, please share our information, because that's how we get the word out to everybody. We're there to help you. I just wanted to give you a little bit of information on this. This is new information to me. I don't know it by heart, but for many years people ask, is there any help for us to mitigate our house? We don't have the money. Well, there is the USDA Rural Development, and they offer loans and grants. However, before you get excited about that, and I do have a flyer on the table back here. It is to help remove health and safety hazards, also to repair your home. But like I said, before you get excited about it, there's a caveat. There's lots of caveats, and one of them is that you have to be very low income. And there is a chart on this flyer that gives the income rates for that. And age for grants too. So I'm not going to go into detail. I just wanted to let you know about this. A lot of people won't even test their home because they know they can't afford it. Well, there is some help for them. And why are they offering these grants? It's to help our communities stay healthy communities. So next is Derek Carpenter. He's a certified radon mitigator for Nevada. He also has a Nevada State contractor's license. And there are people, repair people out there that maybe in the yellow pages, and they say that they're radon mitigators. But if they aren't on our list, or California has a list too of certified mitigators, if they aren't on our list, we don't know what their standards are. We don't know if they're going to be building the radon system in your house.
When you say, excuse me, our list, you mean TRPA has a list?
Okay, so we're the Nevada Radon Education Program, so that's what I mean by our. And we have a website that has all this information on it, like a list of certified radon mitigators for Nevada. And then California, if you want to find the California Radon Program, you could probably go to epa.gov/radon, and then you can find other state programs.
Not through TRPA,
But-
it's through Cooperative Extension.
Oh,
Do they piggyback off each other? I mean, like, you know, California water, Texas water, Nevada water, you know, you got the little triangle going.
There might be links.
Okay. But as far as programs and
Right.
established policy,
California Department of Public Health has the certified radon mitigators for California.
is there reciprocity for Nevada or just California?
Just for California.
Reciprocity, as I stated earlier, Nevada does not have any regulations, so there's no requirement that they be certified. We recommend that you use a certified contractor, and we recommend that you also use someone who's a Nevada state contractor. But there's no regulation that says they have to have any training at all in Nevada. That comes in if California was a regulatory state and if Nevada was, then you get reciprocity.
so So we have 2 certified radon mitigators here in this room. Jim Gorman in the very back, raise your hand. And Derek Carpenter. And Derek's in Minden. And he's going to bring the program about mitigation next. Thank you.
Just to give you a little clarity on the certification, it's an independent organization that does certification for radon. The contractor's board gives licenses. So the big thing is if you find somebody that claims to be certified but they don't have a contractor's license, if they mess up your home, there's nothing you can do about it. Basically, the contractor's board will come and look, did you use a licensed contractor? And you say no, they say, well, you should have.
So there's no cradle to grave law or anything like that in that situation? Or?
No, that's why they say, the law says if it's anything on your home over $500, you're supposed to use a licensed contractor, whatever the contractor is. And for Nevada, there's a residential recovery fund. So if that contractor messes up and does something and you need help, you can go to the contractor's board and we all pay into that every year and you can get your money, you can get protected, and the contractor's board will come after us, the contractors, for that. If the person's not licensed, there's nothing you can do. So that's kind of why they say find somebody licensed, because you're protected that way. And if somebody doesn't have a contractor's license, there's a reason. They're not that hard to get if you know what you're doing. So they're trying to protect you in that. So yeah, like they said, there's Jim back there. My business is Aired Out Radon Removal. And then there's Norm Denning. So there's 3 licensed contractors in the state of Nevada. And there's probably more in California, I don't know. So here's the main thing. It says radon problems can be fixed. They say number 4 is the action level. You want to get below 4 picocuries per liter. The goal for us mitigators is as low as possible. So we want to go for outdoor levels, which is 0.5, 0.6. So we want to do a good job. If I've done some where I walk away and it was 3.8 or something, and I said, that's not right, and I crawled under and, because there's a little hole. Sealed it up, and now it was 0.8. So we want to get as low as possible. And you see here the main goal is active soil depressurization. That's the most effective, is prevent the radon from coming into the house at all. So create a suction underneath. It's a vacuum. So here's the picture on a slab, and Adrian talked a little bit about that. But you just put a kind of a hole down in the concrete. Contractors who know what they're doing, we can do a test to see the right place to put that hole and put a pipe and then create a suction, and then it just sucks the radon out from underneath. Here's a picture of it. The fan can be on the side of the home. The fan can be in the attic. Every house is different. If there's not a good place on the side of the home, then go through. It's nice if in the house you can hide it. You can hide the pipe in a closet and put the fan in the attic. These fans come with at least a 5-year warranty, but most are lasting much longer. I've been doing it since '09 is when I began. I haven't had one go bad yet. So here's another picture of a basement foundation. Like Adrian said, sealing the cracks will help the system, but it won't do it on its own. One example, I did a house that was small, 800 square feet, and it was a crawl space. And they said, you know what, let's experiment just putting the sheeting down, no fan. We did that, and their levels didn't come down at all. We turned the fan on, and it came down to about a 0.6. So it's all about a combination of sealing as much as possible and getting the pressure, getting the vacuum sucking it out. So that's the picture of sealing. Again, similar pictures here. This is a submembrane depressurization system. So if you have a crawl space, we have to go down into the crawl space and cover all of the dirt. Everything we can get to, and even what we can't get to. And some of you, if you're up here in Tahoe, your home is built on a hill, and there's rocks underneath, and the worst one I ever did was here. And I had to go down with a shovel and dig like this, and then squeeze in and dig some more, just to cover all the soil, and then seal this sheeting to the foundation. So it's sealed to the concrete, and this is important. This is why, again, you need somebody certified and a contractor. You don't want to be sealing to wood. You're going to create problems sealing to wood. You want to seal to concrete. So there's a lot of strategies when it comes to different homes and the best way to do it. Sometimes you have to be creative and even artistic, it feels like, to do it the best way possible. But the sheeting goes down, Sealed tight, you're going for an airtight seal as good as possible. You see every pipe that's sealed around. This was one that I think Norm did on the bottom. That's one that I did up there on the top. But it's all the same idea. You see here a high-strength polyethylene sheeting. You don't want to use just Visqueen. You know, if you have Visqueen under your house, which you probably do, it wears out, it gets old. But the sheeting used for Radon, a lot of it's cross-laminated, it's puncture-resistant, very strong, should last the life of your home. Here's just another picture of after mitigation in a crawl space. Now, here's the fans. And here's actually, we have one here, and I'll plug it in for you in just a minute. But a fan on the outside of the home, you see that, it's just attached to the pipe. Run up, and in this situation, you can either run through the eave, or you can pop out, but it needs to be above the roof line there, at least 6 inches above the roof line. It needs to be discharging at a safe place. Somebody here said there's one discharging right down by their window. And I've seen that before up here, actually. One went up and vented right below the eave. They just refused to, or forgot to put the elbow, I don't know. And there was a window on either side. And that's actually making the problem more dangerous if you're going to open those windows and have gas coming in. So you want to vent it up, and once it's up, it's going to dissipate. Here's one with a shroud on it. Looks a little nicer. You see here there's a downspout painted, looks like the house. So there's a lot of things you can do where you live to make it look better. Or, of course, the simplest option, if it's on the side of the house where nobody sees, you just do that. Just point this out. Actually, no, there's another slide, so I'm not going to. Here's the fan in the attic. Fans in the attic are nice and protected. They do the same thing. Discharge should be 12 inches above the roof surface. You know, up in here, you might need to put one of those little ice things on for snow and all that to protect it. Here's one, and I get this question a lot. What about a rain cap? Rain caps aren't recommended, and the reason why is if there's something on top of the radon hits, then it can come back down. You just want to blow it up out. But people ask about water. What about water? And up here, you know, you get a lot of snow and things. These fans are designed, and you put the fan in a way it's supposed to be vertical, so any water that gets in the pipe, any moisture, can run down and go around the fan. This one here actually has you can do this. That's to move the water around the fan. So they're built in a way you don't need a cap. Let me go back and mention one thing. But inside, there should be a screen. So if a squirrel decides to go up there and say, hey, what's this, and falls in, it can't fall in. And I've heard of that actually happening. Exactly. You know, here's a picture of some of the gauges. Every system should have a gauge. The reason why is, how do you know when it stops working? If your fan is in the attic, they're so quiet you can't hear. How do you know if it's running or not? So you need a gauge. This is called a YouTube manometer. If the pipe is somewhere where you can see it, you know, and I tell customers, put it where you can see it, where you'll check it. I typically use this one. It depends on the home, but I like this one because it's a low voltage fan. You run a low voltage line to this box somewhere in the garage. You plug it in. Someplace you just walk by and you see it. And there's a needle right there in the middle that shows you it's still running. And this system, those will actually show you how much you're sucking. So if there's a change in it, it can show you that. Adrian was saying he likes these a lot. They're very expensive. But these work fine too. Labeling on it, so if it does go off, you can call the person that installed it. I've had a few calls over the years for these. You know, hey, something's going on. And I normally say, check that switch right on the side. I say, oh, oops, the broom hit it. So that's there. This is a fire caller. Again, this is why you want a licensed contractor to know things like this, where you're penetrating into a garage or into the house or something like that. You need these fire collars, so if a fire is spreading, it melts that pipe, and then that collar just expands and stops the fire, and that's the code. Crawl space depressurization. We get this one too. This is cheaper. Well, can't we just put a fan in the crawl space and just suck the air out? You can, but here's all the things that could happen. It can increase radon levels because you're creating more of a suction on the soil, and hopefully it's all going out, but it might be coming in the house. Here's kind of the big thing for you guys up here is it can suck the heated and cooled air from the house. So your energy is gonna affect your energy bills, sucking the heated air. But also, if you have pipes down in your crawl space, and right now, or around this time of year when it's 0 degrees and you're sucking frozen air or freezing air in, you could have a real problem. So it's not recommended. Cost estimate, basement or slab foundations, that's where you just put a hole in the concrete and suck it out from there, $1,800 to $3,000. That's fairly accurate. Crawl space system, 3,000 and up. I think a few years ago that used to say 3 to 4, 3 to 5, and some homes can get much higher depending on a lot of factors. Is it built on piers, strip footings? How accessible is it? New home construction, and I wanted to show this. If you want to look this, if you're going to be building a home, you can give this to your contractor. Putting it in is going to be less expensive, but the best part is you're putting in a good system. You're able to hide it. You never see the pipe. And here's just a picture of a passive system, no fan. You can do this in a new home. You can attempt it in other situations as well without a fan. And it's called the stack effect, that the air hopefully will create its own suction. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. One other thing, I was just going to emphasize, these books are handy. The reason I got into the business in 2009 was my in-laws, got a test done and they had a level of 16, and there was only one company at the time doing it, and they got a price through the roof. And I said, well, let's figure this out. And I was a contractor, so I went over and I helped them do it. We got it down to 0.9, and this was, I think, the book that I used to help do it. And then I realized, well, I need to go get certified and help people with this. So if you're a handy person, you may be able to do it yourself. Or if not, like you said, you'll know if the person's blowing smoke because this is very, very helpful. So it's worth the $25. I highly recommend it. The guy who wrote it is actually the guy who does a lot of the trainings. So those of us that get certified, some of us take his classes. So you'll know as much as us maybe if you take this.
What's the name of it?
Protecting your home from radon. They sell it right back here for $25. I'll sell it to you right now for 35. 35. 40. All right.
The 25 is
Library
cost.
too.
They have it at the library?
Libraries too.
You can check it out. Nobody goes to a library anymore.
Really?
Oh, come on.
Not with Amazon and podcasts.
Do you want to show them your fan?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Let me plug this in.
Let me just tell you, we forgot our evaluation forms, so you don't have to throw them out.
While you're doing that, Susan asked me to say something earlier while the fan's coming on. I've seen these stacks fans sometimes not be put up above the roof line. In fact, I saw one time that came out of the side of the house, out to the guy's patio where he had his chair next to his barbecue. The concentrations coming out of there are in the thousands of picocuries per liter. Sometimes.
I've actually found myself working and then turn it on. I go up to do something, I'm like this, and go, oh my goodness. I'm just going to fall over dead.
Take a
So,
deep breath.
yeah, he's right.
Do you know how many watts is in it?
What is the voltage on this one?
Is it like 60 watts?
I'm told it's comparable to light bulb.
120 volts, 60 hertz, 1 amp max. Yeah, they're kind of like a light bulb. So if you have kids like I do, you have at least one light bulb left on all year long. So that's about what it costs. What was your question, sir?
I used to be the state military NBC guy
Okay.
for shipping nuclear, biological stuff. The illumination bars and the compasses and things like that. I used to use these little black testers in the vaults, and then every 60 days I had to go in there with my, gadget thing, whatever it was, whatever the military called it. My question is they also had these swab things. Once you complete setting up a system, a removal system, are there swabs to go, throughout the house
No.
to double check?
The rest of that uranium-238 decay chain that isn't shown on that one that we showed is radium-226. Radium-226 is actually the predecessor directly to radon-222. Radium-226 decays into radon-222. What they're doing with the swabs, number one, the little black test case, you're testing for radon to see if it's leaking and building up radon concentrations in the area. The swabs, though, are to test for leakage of that radium itself, because typically they're a radium salt. And if they're leaking, they'll actually kind of migrate out. And radium is extremely radiotoxic, again, if it's ingested. It works just like calcium, goes to the bones, bone cancer.
Well, and you talk about post-mitigation, your mitigator will provide you with a test at the end, that after a couple days of letting it kind of air, you can air it out and close it back up. You got to do a post-mitigation test and see where you ended up. Any other questions on mitigation? Yes, ma'am. Or question in general? We got all of them.
Does the age of your home or when it was built have much to do with, I mean, as far as how much it's going to leak and?
Not really. There are a lot of variables that come into play. And one of the highest concentrations in a home in the United States, way back when, exceeding 2,000 picocuries per liter, was in a 200-year-old barn that had been converted to a house. Obviously tighter than it was as a barn, but not as tight as the homes we built now. Depends on the source, depends on the pathway, depends on how many air exchanges in the home. There are just too many variables. I used to say that there are only two types of houses that had, help me out with this.
Okay. No, there's actually 3 or 4.
3 or 4. I used to say 2 houses on stilts and
Tree house.
mobile homes without skirting. Now, if the mobile home has skirting, then you've got a conduit from the soil. Then they kind of reminded me about a tree house. And then we came to a houseboat. Okay, so there's 4.
Any other questions? Any at all?
Flooding your crawl space will mitigate radon.
I'm sorry?
Having a flooded crawl space would mitigate it.
If the source is good, yeah, it will. It'll block it. I mean,
It can't
it'll
go through
migrate
water.
It'll migrate through eventually, but again, like I said, moisture, if the source is not directly under the home, off to the side, moisture in the soil or a snow cap will impede that and it'll move toward an area of lower pressure.
So flood your crawl space, and your neighbor will get the radon. I went in one that was flooded, and there was frogs everywhere.
Okay, so you get your test back and it's necessary for you to retest because you're above 4, you're at 8 or something like that effect. So you come down here and you get another test, sample test thing, or maybe not a sample test, but another short time test. And that comes back again, so where do you get the long-term test? And where do you go from there?
They sell the long-term tests also at cost, which is considerably cheaper than you find it anyplace else.
$15, Cooperative Extension.
Okay.
You can also-
I just wanted to know where, I don't,
What,
I know
you
my
see
house is
cooperative,
bad.
what cooperative extension?
Cooperative Extension. Our office is right across the street from Lampy Park down in Gardnerville.
Yeah, it's a Nevada's cooperative extension?
University of
or
Nevada.
California, okay.
University of Nevada Cooperative Extension.
If you're from California, I don't know that the program in California is selling them.
I'm Nevada.
Okay, but if somebody is from California, I don't know that they're selling them. You can typically find long-term test kits. They're also called an alpha track detector. Yeah, maybe a hardware store or something like that. Certainly online, but the cost is usually around $30.
It's $39.95 or more.
Oh, it's gone up.